I'd like to start by thanking you for taking the time to attend this conference. I know that all of us are very busy at the moment, so I appreciate you carving time out of your day to listen to the various speakers, and I hope you have and will find value in what each of us have to say. A little bit about me. I've been working in the marketing industry for over 25 years at various companies and in various countries. I've personally founded 3 startups, all of them in different countries to my birth country, so I have a particular empathy to the mission and goals of Startups Without Borders, and I'm very happy to be invited to this event. Today I head up KEXINO. For the past 13 years we've been helping startups and small businesses around the world increase customer awareness, reputation, trust, and most importantly, sales. As well as KEXINO, I also lecture on marketing and behavioural economics at a business school in Strasbourg in France, which I've been doing for the past 7 years. Okay, that's enough of the ad. Let's get started, shall we? Today, right at the moment, our personal lives, our professional lives, and our physical worlds are all intersecting. The past 12 months have forced us to rethink what marketing is and how it works. We're all working around the clock to define what this new path forward looks like as the world changes around us. But what's interesting to me is how the events of the past year or so have taken the importance of every company's marketing experience to a whole new level. Why? Because it's had to. Constraint breeds creativity. This is when the very best ideas and best practices for the next decade are born. While I know the past year has already been very challenging for many of us, I want to shift your perspective for a moment and think about the fact that what lies ahead in the coming months and years isn't something that you should be fearful of. It's something that we should all look forward to, because it gives us, all of us, an unbelievable opportunity. 2021 and beyond gives all of us the chance to start afresh, to wipe the slate clean. It forces us to think differently and reinvent customer experiences for the next decade and beyond. And make no mistake, the way that we've been marketing over the past 10 to 15 years has to change. Now, I'm not going to say some nonsense about the new normal, since I have some pretty unpopular thoughts on that particular subject. What I will say is the fallout from COVID has put the importance of marketing and marketing-led thinking right at the top of most organisations' agenda this year and the years to come, especially in the B2B space. For example, how relevant are business processes today as we define what a post-COVID world looks like? How will your customer acquisition model need to change to remain effective or even just relevant? Think about retail, for example, after we've seen the fastest growth in e-commerce for the past decade. Or think about the traditional model of sales reps visiting clients in an age when 40% of businesses see working from home, either part-time or full-time, becoming a permanent feature of employment. Does all of that go back to where we were before? Marketing in the B2B space offers perhaps the greatest opportunity for disruption and growth, simply because it's traditionally been so far behind B2C. Perhaps because we were too close to the problem to be able to see it for what it was. But a great many marketing and sales efforts were generating smaller and smaller results for a reason. Most marketing stinks. Many marketers and a great many agencies have become lazy. Even more than that, I contend that they have not been doing their jobs properly. Because for far too long, too many marketers have been hiding behind data in an effort to excuse their poor results. Diminished responsibility through plausible deniability has become the order of the day. It seems that as long as you can show the numbers to support your decisions, you can't be held accountable for the results. This is patently ridiculous. Over recent years, the consistent erosion of effective marketing can, I think, be partly attributed to the over-reliance on data, to the exclusion of extracting sensible insights of that data into buyer behaviour. The standard economic theory of how customers make buying decisions, how they think, decide and act, bears very little relationship to what's going on in people's minds in the real world, or what the data reveals from direct response marketing. Fewer and fewer marketers seem to bother with the basics of marketing and move straight to tactical execution. There's precious little thought or foresight about the only thing that actually matters in the grand scheme of things, the customer. As an industry, we've reached a point where making a marketing decision based on assumptions on the emotional reasoning of the customer is seen as being less valid as one based on assumptions founded on logic. We hold rational reason to a higher standard than emotional reasoning, even though audiences are anything but rational. If you try something based on logic and it doesn't work, you can blame the data and people will forgive you. However, if you try something based upon psychological reasoning and it doesn't work, everyone will blame you. You could lose a client or even your job. The only customer-facing part of any marketing initiative is the communication. Images, videos, sound, text, whatever. So why do we look to commoditize and automate this last part of the chain with crappy design and poorly executed communication? We'll spend hours on crafting custom audience profiles, geolocational constraints, integrating tracking pixels and remarketing tags and all that other shit. Then we'll give the creative execution to some Photoshop factory to vomit out 50 different variations of an ad and measure the results. That's not marketing. Knowing how to use a particular piece of software doesn't make you a marketer. Recent research from LinkedIn's B2B Institute concludes that 77% of B2B ad creative fails to resonate. And the overwhelming reason for that is, as marketers, we've failed to convince corporate leadership of the importance of creative in the process of marketing. The Ehrenberg Bass Institute claims that great creative is 10 to 20 times better at driving sales compared to mediocre creative. Yet creative is frozen out of 99% of digital marketing, because idiots have managed to sell digital as a targeting optimization game and a competition between algorithms. However, even Google and Facebook, companies that make the majority of their money from ads that don't really work that well, say that creative is the single biggest determinant of success. The time spent on media optimization compared to the time spent on creative optimization is entirely out of balance. What we call marketing today has been devalued from a marketing function to a communications function. But when you look at a business or an experience through the eyes of an individual customer, you see different things. And different things take on different importances compared to looking at the business through the eyes of a balance sheet or a Google Analytics dashboard. All of this causes rationalists to see the world in a particular way which isn't the way it's experienced by an individual. The problem with allowing data to drive marketing decisions is that, while you're pursuing efficiency, you're getting trapped in a local maximum. Just because something makes rational sense doesn't mean it's true, and doesn't mean it's going to work. Why do so few marketers bother with creativity? Perhaps because it's easier to compile a targeting matrix than it is to compile a creative one. Which is why we have the current situation where 99% of the crap on the internet hasn't been 100 meters of a strategist, planner or copywriter from its gestation to its delivery. As David Avett, the famous advertising guru, once said, shit delivered at the speed of light is still shit. So does that mean data-driven marketing should be avoided? Not at all. Quite the opposite, in fact. The problem, as I see it, with what we've come to know as data-driven marketing is that we're looking at the wrong data on which to base our decisions, and therefore coming up with the wrong answers. Let me give you an example. Imagine you took data of measurements of a car driving along the road at 80 kilometers an hour. That's 15 miles an hour for the Brits and Americans out there. Now, supposing the data shows the car slowing down from 80 kilometers to 0. What does the data show us, other than the car has stopped? Perhaps it means the driver has reached her destination. Perhaps she stopped at a traffic light. Perhaps the car has broken down. Or perhaps a driver has a heart attack. Relying solely on data-driven marketing means you're showing an ad for heart medication when you should be showing an ad for a mechanic. The context isn't there. Decisions, even the decisions that we think we're taking rationally, are actually taken emotionally. That's the same whether you're talking B2B or B2C, other than in B2B there's usually more than one decision maker. Apart from commodity purchases, which is where branding comes into play in a very strong way, virtually everything we buy, consciously or unconsciously, we buy from the heart, we buy emotionally. and we post-rationalize logically. Are you familiar with the amygdala? The amygdala is part of the limbic system of the brain, which is involved with emotions and other reactions to stimuli. It's highly involved with different emotional responses. I think as marketers we should be less data-driven and more amygdala-driven. Now, don't get me wrong, I think there's enormous value in data and measurement. I mean, we use data every day in our agency. But data only tells you what people are doing. It doesn't explain or allow you to generalize why they may be doing it. And understanding why is a much more interesting field of activity. Marketing in the old days was about getting attention. Today, it's about getting trust. Because if you have trust, you don't need to worry about attention. What's missing from most marketers' toolkits is the implicit and fundamental understanding of human behavior. Now, some people call this behavioral economics or behavioral science. But at the end of the day, it's nothing more than psychology, the study of human behavior in context. And it's the word context which is the most important, because the way we think and act is totally different depending on the context. Marketing at its heart is a branch of economics. It's heterodox economics. Conventional economics, so-called Chicago School economics or neoclassical economics, whatever you want to call it, is an attempt to create a context-free science of human behavior. Economics has created a model of the world that is completely marketing-free, which is probably why most people trained in economics kind of hate marketing. They see it as a necessary evil, think it's inefficient, and as part of the business that it's a cost that should be minimized since all it does is serve to erode the bottom line. The creative mind of the marketer is deeply annoying to the highly rationalist mind of the classical economist. We ask questions and look in places that a logic-based mindset seems as deeply irrelevant, counterintuitive, counterproductive, and having no bearing on the problem at hand. But that's the whole point. The failure to recognize these opportunities is because it runs contrary to our natural instinct to have single right answers produced by reliable and repeatable process. The issue is that a straightforward, sequential logic-based process delivers a kind of result, but often a result nowhere near the level of expectation required. But because the execution and assumptions are easy to defend, they're seen in a better light. I think such thinking is a bias that pervades businesses at every level. It's less about focusing on the quality of the outcome and more about focusing on the rigor of the decision-making that got you there. Marketing data and mathematical models play on our love of certainty and hate of ambiguity, essentially causing us to be much more comfortable, but in a kind of fake, deterministic, Newtonian model of the world. However, we're lying to ourselves. We're choosing to ignore the mess, chaos, and complexity that the world actually is. The problem is, when we think of data, we think it's maths. By that I mean we think it's perspective-free and context-free. We say to ourselves, well, it's like maths, it's objective, these are the facts. But numbers aren't facts. They're a particular take on reality. Numbers don't tell us the full story, and yet we tend to think they do. Data isn't proof. Data is evidence. So, economists hate marketers. But guess what? Marketers hate economists. Why? Because of the way economists think that what works at a group level can be stripped back to a model at the individual level, which is totally bananas. For example, when you look at customer data, you're often looking at an average, which assumes a certain displacement across the curve. But averages never tell you the whole story. Imagine putting your feet in 2 buckets of liquid. One bucket is at 100 degrees Celsius, the other bucket is at minus 60 degrees Celsius. That means the average temperature is 20 degrees Celsius. There's a great quote from Nassim Taleb which goes something like, never cross a river when it's 1 meters deep on average. Averages are a dangerous thing. By seeking to exclude marketing from its model, economics doesn't see any difference between 10 people buying one thing once and 1 person buying something 10 times, which is clearly totally ridiculous. Our brains have evolved to be highly sensitized to context in how we respond. Our perception of virtually everything is hugely context dependent. It's how we've evolved as humans. If I'm invited to your house for dinner, I would probably bring along a nice bottle of wine, or maybe I'd bring a bouquet of flowers. But at the end of the meal, I would not leave some money on the table, even though an economist would see that as being the same thing. Economists also draw a straight line between the price of something and the number of sales it makes. Their underlying presumption is that if you sell your product cheaper, more people will buy it. But this has been proven time and time again to be wrong. Why? Because the price of something is context dependent. Instead of trying to make your products cheaper, look for ways to make your products seem cheaper. 25 years ago, if I was Howard Schultz and I said to you I wanted you to come to my store to spend $6 on a cup of coffee served to you in a paper cup, when you could make a perfectly decent cup of coffee at home for maybe 30 cents, you'd look at me and say I was crazy. Selling Nespresso capsules at 40 cents each is seen by buyers as being reasonable. But if you put the contents of 100 Nespresso capsules into a jar, no one would spend $40 on it. See what I mean? So our perception of everything, including price, is hugely context dependent. It's also important to remember that we do not perceive the world objectively. Therefore, you can change the perceived value of something not by changing the thing itself, but by changing the context in which it's perceived. Let's use video conferencing as an example. Video conferencing has been around for nearly 20 years. But 2 years ago, if someone in your team said, let's not fly to New York for the meeting with our big new client, let's do it over Zoom instead, they would have been considered a weirdo, right? Today, suggesting to have a meeting in person on the other side of the world is a choice most people would be alarmed at. Notice that technology hasn't changed, simply the context has changed. Society doesn't change when it adopts new technologies. Society only changes when it adopts new behaviours. So what if we could reimagine marketing? Creating customer experiences that are more resonant, more resilient, and being more accountable along the way. What if, instead of focusing on customer access and customer retention, we focused on customer trust, customer advocacy, and yes, even customer empathy? Because isn't empathy part of any valued relationship? Isn't having empathy part of the road we must travel as marketers to truly understand the customer, their problems, concerns, hopes, dreams, aspirations? Isn't marketing resonating at an emotional level more in line with customer expectation for what a partner actually is? Shouldn't we all, as marketers, be striving for connection at this emotional level, creating messages that resonate with the heart as much, if not more, than the head? Now, I don't just mean being more customer-centric. The term customer centricity gets thrown around with abandon, but simply listening to customers doesn't get us to the real truth, because deep down, customers don't know what they want. Henry Ford is supposed to have said, if we asked our customers what they wanted, they would say a faster horse. Alternatively, customers misrepresent what they want, because they post-rationalise their predisposition by contriving a bunch of plausible-sounding reasons for why they want something. The truth is the prefrontal cortex is a bullshitter and is completely delusional about the role it plays in decision-making. To paraphrase JP Morgan, yes, that JP Morgan, a man always has two reasons for doing anything, a good reason and the real reason. It's not safe to say that we're customer-centric because that doesn't give us the full picture. If we simply listen to what customers tell us, we'd never have the iPhone. You may remember Steve Ballmer, the then president of Microsoft, saying, there's no chance the iPhone is going to get any significant market share. If we only listened to what customers told us, Dyson wouldn't be able to sell a vacuum cleaner for $800. Before Uber, no one said they wanted to see a map of where the car was before it arrived, so they knew how long they'd have to wait. Do you see? 2021 is our time, ladies and gentlemen. This is our time and our new reality. It's forcing us to think differently, to turn off the what works cruise control, to simplify, to focus, to change our definition of success. Marketing has had the creativity knocked out of it in the past 10 years or so. Also, that creativity as an approach to problem solving, which marketing is clearly concerned with, is deployed far too narrowly. Essentially, decisions get taken by highly rational people on the basis of rational sequential logic. Then, at the very last moment, they'll call in the creatives to make it look nice, to a framework that's already been designed without their input. I think this is the wrong way round. As Rory Sutherland says, there are far more great ideas that can be post-rationalised than great ideas that can be pre-rationalised. And if we confine our thinking to only trying things that make sense in advance, we're massively limiting the potential solution space. And it's partly the fault of the marketing industry that got us here. Over the years, there's been a growth in natural tendency to leap to communications-based solutions when looking to address business problems. As an industry, we need to reform marketing by getting people to accept that value is subjective and context-dependent and meaning-dependent. That value is formed in the mind of the customer and is produced by the singer as much as it's produced by the song. The Austrian School of Economics understood that the only real definition of value is whatever somebody is prepared to pay. They also understood that marketing creates value every bit as much as manufacturing does. Over the years, marketers have been told time and time again that we're a cost, and we've come to believe it. The reason marketers are doing all this programmatic stuff or boring advertising or banal social media posts or whatever is because they're desperate to justify their existence. But marketing isn't a cost. It's an inherent part of the value creation process. If you don't know a product exists, you won't want it. So what's the point of making something really cool if people have never heard of it and don't know how to want it? The reality is growth is our job. That's the job. Marketing isn't marketing anymore. Marketing is sales. Marketing is operations. Marketing is customer support. Marketing is finance. It's time for all of us to rally around this new mental model. What are the implications for this shift? Well, firstly, marketers have got to be able to speak the language of the boardroom, the language of finance. We need to abandon all this marketing geek speak, all the jargon that we love and we understand amongst ourselves, and really start to communicate the way the business expects us to. Financial rigour and an obsessive commitment to marketing return on investment is foundational to marketing performance. If you aren't spending time with your finance counterparts, discussing and agreeing and aligning on what your formula for ROI should look like and how you want to measure that and use that to improve the health of your business, then you should be starting that right now. Ultimately, marketers have got to be bold enough to draw a new line in the sand. Those who redefine their purpose, those who are willing to rewrite the rules of engagement, will be the ones who reignite customer passion for their brand. As global travel and global spending begins to flourish once again, it's these marketers who will be the first to capture that new loyalty. I want that to be you. I want that to be me. I want that to be all of us together. Marketing must evolve and continue to take on more and more operational responsibilities, strategic responsibility for the businesses within which they operate. Having those skills within the marketing department are going to be more important than ever before. We have a golden opportunity to go back to the heart and soul of marketing, the power of human connection. As marketers, we've spent years being preached to and preaching about the value of fully integrated experiences and campaigns, from digital to in-person and everything in between. Yet experiences are not made at a single touch point in time. They're seamlessly, intelligently woven together, and every moment is distinct, relevant and valuable. Together, they add up to something worth remembering, to log in your brain forever and look back with affinity. Will the role of the salesperson eventually go away? Absolutely not. Marketing is a direct line for driving customer insights into the hands of every salesperson for more meaningful conversations. Marketing and sales must coordinate across every touch point. They can then understand more deeply what content matters to each account through every step of the journey. Together, we can define what this new era of customer experiences and digital transformation can look like for an entire industry. Thank you again for taking your priceless time out of your day to be with me today. You can reach me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or via the KEXINO website. Let's be safe, but most of all, let's be brave. and be bold together. Thank you all.